Sonny Donnelly, IFL TV, in association with MGM Marbella. I'm here with Ed Robinson at the XL in London for the Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank Jr. press conference. Ed, didn't go as planned today with Eubank Jr. not showing up. Was you expecting that?
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? Because it costs money to bring a camera out. There's people here, and there's the worry about crying wolf because there are probably less people here than there should have been for a Eubank Jr. Billy Joe Saunders press conference, and that's just because people are cynical about whether Eubank would actually turn up. And you can do it once or twice. It kind of creates some intrigue, but you want to get the two of them together, you know, because people are sceptical about the fight happening. I'm sure it will happen, but it doesn't really help. It doesn't help sell tickets or subscriptions.
Some people are branding Eubank Jr. as disrespectful for not turning up. Do you share that opinion?
I don't know enough about what has gone on between Frank Warren and Eubank Sr. regarding problems with it. I mean, like we've read, and Frank mentioned about this £50,000 in an escrow account, which just seems ridiculous because they're worried about Billy Joe Saunders laying hands on Eubank Jr. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Yeah, it's unfortunate, really.
Do you think it's going to be a good fight? Can you see it going the distance, or can you see someone stopping?
I think it's a good fight. I think Billy Joe Saunders wins based on what I've seen, as opposed to what I've heard. I think Billy Joe Saunders is got greater experience, more accomplished boxer. Neither one is like a massive one-punch knockout artist. They've both got good chins, so generally it comes down to mental attitude, work rate, and who's got the better boxing brain. And at the moment, Billy Joe Saunders, all that amateur experience, he went something like 40-something fights, unbeaten as a junior going into a senior, fought in the Olympics, had really good sparring all the way through. I just think he's just more accomplished. You know, Eubank Jr. seems to have a lot of mental strength, but when you go into a fight, there's always a few doubts if you haven't done something before, whereas the truth is Billy Joe Saunders has topped the bill before. He's actually a chief supporter here, and he's been against unbeaten fighters, and he's done 12 rounds, and he's got Jimmy Tibbs in his corner, and I just think there's quite a few advantages for Billy Joe, so I kind of lean towards him quite strongly. With Eubank Jr., it's what you've heard from the gyms, from sparring with George Groves, from sparring with Carl Froch. I first saw him in the gym in Las Vegas when I went over there to see Marcus Maidana train in Las Vegas before he fought Amir Khan. And Miguel Diaz said to me, "Oh, you won't guess who this guy is." And he walked in, you could see straight away it was Eubank Jr. And it was Thanksgiving in America, so the only two people in the gym were Chris Eubank Jr. and Maidana and the trainers. And he trained really hard. You could see he's dedicated, you could see he was strong. But if you go purely on logic, he's just not fought in the same level as Billy Joe Saunders.
Above Billy Joe Saunders, his own father has compared him to the likes of Golovkin. Do you think that's ridiculous?
I think it's ridiculous. Talk about extra pressure. I mean, in some ways I think, maybe Eubank Sr. Frank Warren and Jimmy Tibbs think he's basically involved with it for ego, and all this is to do with Chris Eubank Sr.'s ego. I thought maybe it's to kind of take pressure off his son to a certain extent, because he's becoming the focus and the story, and allowing Chris Eubank Jr. just to get on with his training or whatever. But then when you say something like he'd beat Golovkin, he'd beat Mayweather, it's just kind of crazy talk at this stage in his career. And, you know, just crazy. Even if you thought it, why say it at this stage when you haven't beaten anyone really?
Do you think that his dad sort of misses the limelight and sees his son fighting as an opportunity to get his name back out there, or you get on TV, because obviously everyone is well known that he stands in the ring when he's fighting, which a lot of people don't agree with. Do you think he does that for attention?
He's always been an attention seeker, but it's not really for me to talk about his motives. I saw an interview he did with Steve Lillis on Frank Warren's Deborah show, and he was saying about how it was a beautiful thing seeing his son get beaten up by a Cuban amateur heavyweight in Cuba, and it kind of made me feel a bit uncomfortable, to be honest, because if you're the father of a boy, you don't want to see him get beaten up by anybody, you don't want to see him get hurt at all. And I thought that was quite strange, and I don't know, time will tell. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? If Eubank Jr. turns over Billy Joe Saunders, everyone will say that it was some master plan and that it was genius at work. And if he gets beaten and gets embarrassed, then people will say, what a plum. But, you know.
Obviously, that isn't the only two Brits fighting on the card. You've also got Frankie Gavin and Bradley Skeet. How can you see that fight panning out?
I think with Frankie Gavin came back the other day and got a confidence booster. Bradley Skeet, I mean, the vulnerability we've seen with Frankie Gavin so far is probably to body shots once or twice and to cuts a bit. Bradley Skeet's like a tall, not really a massive puncher, long-range boxer, but he's really up for it, Bradley Skeet, really up for it. I'm quite close to Al Smith, who trains him, with Eddie Lamb at the EUBANK Gym, and they're really, really up for it. But Gavin is an amateur, you couldn't hit him with a bag of rice, just such beautiful defensive skills. So I think a lot of it comes down to mental attitude on the night. If Gavin's trying too hard to prove a point, I think he falls into Bradley Skeet's hands. But they're both kind of counter punchers, so it could be an awkward blend. I'm really looking forward to it because I think it's really intriguing to know the result, but it could be a messy blend of styles. We'll have to wait and see.
So what do you think of, obviously, promoters putting their own fighters against each other, especially when they're from the same country? Obviously, Eddie Hearn done it with Good John versus Boylan, and obviously Boylan lost his O. Do you support them doing that?
I think it's all about communication. I think if you've got two boxers and they both want the fight, and you're up front with them and tell them, you know, what's going on, then that's fine. I think there's a lot of paranoia in boxing, and when a boxer thinks he's being stitched up or being used, that's when the problem comes about. But if you say to them, look, this is the deal, do you two want this fight, get them together, whatever, then I don't think there's really a problem with it, you know.
Another, obviously, two Brits fighting, or Welshmen and Englishmen, is Bellew and Cleverly, a couple of weeks in Liverpool. How can you see that one going?
I think a lot of it comes down to Nathan Cleverly's mental attitude, because I think he's been trying a little bit too hard in his last couple of fights and probably tried a bit too hard against Kovalev to win impressively as opposed to win. I think he'll play into Tony Bellew's hands if he comes forward square on and looks for big shots. I think he should use his brain a bit more, and I think Tony Bellew's been a bit more adaptable as a light heavyweight and as a cruiserweight. And I think Nathan's got to try and use his brain a bit, be a bit smart about it, and not just kind of... The two fights we've seen him at cruiserweight, he's come forward like this, looking for big shots, whereas I think Tony Bellew's been a bit more intelligent about his work. Who do you think
is better at that weight, based on recent performances?
I was a massive fan of Tony Bellew when he was an amateur heavyweight, 3-time ABA champion. I thought he'd do really, really well as a pro. And then I was surprised when he came around as a light heavyweight when he first turned over with Anthony Farnell, because he just seemed to... He lost some fat, but he seemed to lose muscle mass as well. And I've seen him in the gym sparring basically as a cruiserweight, even when he was a light heavyweight, and he looked a better fighter than he did when he boiled himself down. So my natural thing is, even though Nathan Cleverly may look more of the athlete at cruiserweight, that it does suit Tony Bellew more.
So if you was his trainer, you'd tell him to go back to that weight?
I don't think Nathan Cleverly could go back to light heavyweight now, because I think he's built himself up, and it's easy to forget that he turned pro. I think he was 18 when he turned pro. He was a welterweight at the time. They both won titles in their 13th fight. He beat Tony Oki in his 13th fight in Liverpool. He's won in Liverpool, I think, 4 times now. And he had some decent wins at light heavyweight. Najim Mohammadi is now the mandatory for Bernard Hopkins, and he was criticised at the time because it was a bit of a messy fight, but that wasn't a bad win at all. I thought Kara Murat was a really good win, but the problem was when he won the title, his defences weren't great. You know, Tommy Carpentier, even though he beat Chad Dawson the other day, that doesn't really mean anything. They weren't great defences. And I think when it came round to fight Kovalev, he wasn't equipped to deal with that kind of fight. And I think he also went in there in Wales. It's like a big night for him in Wales. So he went out there trying to prove a point instead of just trying to win the fight. Maybe it would have made no difference at all. Most likely it would have made no difference at all, because Kovalev is such a massive puncher. But the thing with Cleverly, he's won British, Commonwealth, European and world titles, but they've all been vacant. And that's probably hurt him a little bit as far as credibility goes.
Obviously, another Englishman fighting soon in a war is Andy Lee against Matt Korobov, who could potentially fight the winner of Eubank and Saunders. How can you see Andy Lee going against Korobov?
I think one of the worries with Andy Lee was Adam Booth said that he was dropping down to light middleweight, and now he's fighting at middleweight against a very good puncher in Matty Korobov. Korobov was like a really, really standout amateur. But as a pro, he's been hurt once or twice. He's looked lacklustre once or twice. He's kind of blown hot and cold and not really achieved what Top Rank thought he would. He's also older than people expect for a prospect. And you think, why have they held him back? Why is he not been in bigger fights beforehand? I think he'd be a slight favourite against Andy Lee, who got heavily knocked down against Julian Jackson's son the other day, even though he roared back. And with Andy Lee, he looks great at times, but there's question marks about whether he's kind of rugged and tough enough approach. Just because Chavez, although Chavez was probably so much heavier than him when he fought, just kind of roughed him up and bullied him a little bit. But I think Korobov's the favourite, but there's question marks about Korobov. So, and Andy Lee's a brave, tough guy, and yeah, we'll see.
Okay, well, respect to all the British fighters, and we'll see how they pan out.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can catch up with you again after them fights are done.
Yeah, definitely. Cheers.
Thanks for talking to